Hello. A friend and I were having a friendly but heated discussion on what's wrong with the country today. We went back and forth, and as you might guess, we agreed on some things and not on others. Anyway, he finally asked me, if you were President of the United States, what would you do differently to make things better? A fair question, I thought. So, in order to answer that simple but actually complex question, I decided to pretend as though I had just been elected President of the United States of America, and I'm going to give my inaugural address. I ask your forbearance in this, as I am not skilled, trained, nor experienced in public speaking. In any event, here it is, and thanks for watching. To all the great people of our nation, I offer my sincere appreciation for this opportunity to serve all of you, to help restore our great country to that which it was designed to be, and to ensure the continued advancement of the United States of America. These are awesome responsibilities. I am humbled that such a degree of trust has been bestowed upon me and our administration. I give you my solemn oath to do the very best I can. The very best I can will require help from each of you. I ask for your support in our mission. The road to the presidency has been long and hard fought, but that journey has now ended, and a new journey begins. A new journey for all of us, a new journey that will return our nation to the land of opportunity and greatness it was designed to be. A new journey where the American dream is once again a reality. A new journey that will see the laws of our great land applied equally, without the influence of special interests and without waivers. And a new journey restoring to us the respect, trust, and admiration of the entire world. During my business career, I had a saying: know what you don't know and live by it. Following my own advice, I have sought and have been fortunate to gather into our administration individuals with varied professional, experience, and successful backgrounds. All have demonstrated outstanding leadership in their respective fields. Their opinions on issues vary greatly. This is important. If all think alike, the best interest of all of us will not be properly served. As a political independent, the betterment of any political party is not and will not be something that is of importance to me or to our administration. Of importance will be the betterment of our way of life, a return to fiduciary soundness, and an equal footing under the law for all. Be it straight or gay, white, black, brown, yellow, or copper-colored of skin. Be us Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or Independent. Be us visitors, legal or otherwise. Be us rich, poor, or in between. Be us government officials or regular citizens. We will all be treated equally under the law. Over the last few decades, we have seen our great nation transformed from a nation of laws to a nation of favors, special interests, and a nation where laws are applicable to some and are not applicable to others. We have seen the America we love lose its respected position in the world, our economy falter, our debt skyrocket, and our people in far poorer condition than before. Our new journey, with your help and support, will start the means to rectify this. As time passes, I will address the nation on upcoming considerations. I strongly encourage every one of you to provide your thoughts and considerations to your elected representatives. They're there to represent you. Use them to our collective betterment. Everything I intend to do will have four components in the forefront: the defense of our nation and its people, life's betterment, fiduciary soundness, and equal protection under the law. These are interrelated and cannot be considered each in a separate manner. The approach to these four goals will have at its center the Constitution of the United States of America. Many reasonably will ask, what will I really try and accomplish? After all, campaign promises are one thing, but now the reality of the world comes to bear. The answer is an easy one. One need look only to the policies and intents provided during my campaign. These are exactly what I, with your help, will work diligently to accomplish. This morning, I will offer highlights of my policies and intents relative to issues which seem to occupy much of today's national dialogue. Some of these efforts will have greater successes than others. That is the way of the world, but strive to accomplish them all I will do. However, if failures occur, the blame is mine and mine alone. Where successes happen, and there will be many, the credit goes directly to those who have worked hard to make them happen, and to you, the American people, for your support. First, this great nation is a nation of laws, of and for its people. The adherence to these laws has made our nation great. The foundation of these laws is contained in the United States Constitution. I will not deviate from that foundation. There are some in this country who feel that the Constitution is, or should be, a living document. In fact, it truly is, but not as they would have it. It is and was designed to be changeable. But under our administration, it will not and shall not be ignored or interpreted based on the changing mores of the day. Recently, on this important concept, Supreme Court Justice Scalia offered this, quote, "The Constitution is not a living organism, for Pete's sake. It's a law. It means what it meant when it was adopted," end quote. It contains specific limits on what the federal government is allowed to do, and limits on the powers of the office of the presidency. To these limits, we will adhere. It would be enlightening to all of us to review Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution. It specifies 18 things the government is legally allowed to do, and only these 18. Now compare these 18 with the breadth of the federal government's operation today. You may be amazed. Things are in our Constitution that I wish were not there. There are things I wish were in it but are not. And there are things in our Constitution that I wish were better defined. But I will operate on the following strict guideline. Follow the Constitution or change the Constitution. Ignoring the Constitution does not live here. My views on our Constitution and its mandate come from the voices of our founding fathers, primarily the voice of the Constitution's primary author, James Madison. They have let us know their intent. Indeed, it is the job of the Supreme Court to adjudicate the constitutionality of issues. I will, to the letter, follow the court's rulings. But lacking such defined guidance or ruling, I will adhere to the United States Constitution as our founding fathers intended and as current law dictates. Article 5 of our Constitution specifies 2 methods for its change. However, until such a change is made under Article 5, the Constitution is what it is, and I will follow its mandate. Today I will speak about what I feel are needed changes in how the federal government operates, including, as appropriate, desired amendments to our Constitution. I appropriately will seek the support of Congress toward these ends. Where Congress will not or cannot act, I will request that the states enact applicable constitutional amendments through the Convention of States, as called for in Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. I hold the oath of office I have just been honored to take most seriously. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That being identified, my primary responsibility is to the assurance of the safety of our nation. That I will do without reservation. Beyond the defense of our great nation, a subset of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, shall be my starting point for all of my actions and responsibilities. The First Amendment of the Constitution contains several parts. The first 2 parts state, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That means freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. It is not my job in any way to support or condone those who would attempt to deny someone their freedom of religion. Should a community wish to display a Christmas tree or menorah as examples only, and a limited minority claims that such a display to be an establishment of religion, I would remind them of the second part of the First Amendment, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It is beholden upon the federal government to support, but not dictate, to communities operating within federal law. On the other hand, should a community attempt to deny one religious practice in favor of another, this is equally not acceptable. But it is not the job of the federal government to adjudicate such. All things being equal, I will ask the federal courts to look with an unfavorable eye on that which wishes to thwart the legal desires of the majority in favor of a minority view. If state or local laws are insufficient to assure this, I will endeavor to help rectify the situation within the scope of my constitutional authority. In addition, no religions or foreign nations' laws shall be used as an alternative to the laws of our great land. If state or local laws are insufficient to assure this, I will endeavor to help rectify this situation as well. Also in the First Amendment is contained the guarantee of freedom of the press. The press, of course, as they are now, is and will be totally free to state what they will. However, as has too often been the case of late, certain news sources have taken it upon themselves to make news by editing statements out of context to make someone appear to represent something that did not and do not. Shall any news outlet be found guilty of this reprehensible form of journalism, either aimed at supporting me and our administration, or aimed at anyone against me or against our administration's policies, that news outlet shall be prohibited from directly obtaining news originating from the White House or elsewhere in our administration. There will be no second chance on this. Report facts and offer opinions. Do not report news as you would like to see it. Amendment 2 addresses the right to bear arms. The desire for and against gun control has been a source of agitation in our country for years. Unfortunately, the Constitution's wording on this subject is at best awkward. What is my position on this? James Madison, the father of our Constitution, had this to say: disarm the people. That is the best and most effective way to enslave them. The actual wording of the Second Amendment does not convey the right to bear arms. It says the federal government may not restrict such. Therefore, I will fully stand for the individual's right to own and bear firearms. To be rational, persons with certain mental issues or certain criminal backgrounds should have restrictions. Those restrictions are for the safety of themselves, their families, and the communities in which they live. That's my personal opinion, but currently it is not the right of the federal government to specify such. I will ask Congress to enact a clarification and, if necessary, seek a constitutional amendment to clarify the Second Amendment to adhere to the Founding Fathers' stated intent. The Fourth Amendment guarantees to all the protection from the illegal search and seizure. The Fifth Amendment guarantees due process of law, and the Sixth Amendment guarantees a speedy trial. Therefore, immediately I will ask that the Patriot Act be nullified as applies to all American citizens except those persons or groups correctly and legally designated as domestic terrorists. Also, I will immediately ask Congress to seek the disbanding of the Department of Homeland Security, including the Transportation Security Agency. Neither the DHS nor the TSA has shown to advance the security of our nation or our people. Moreover, the operations of these organizations and the Patriot Act clearly violate the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments in a freewheeling manner. The responsibility of executing the security functions of the DHS shall be moved to the FBI and the CIA as appropriate. To support Congress in its deliberations on this, the White House will develop and provide a viable initial concept for the transition of responsibilities. It is envisioned that such a transition will take considerable time. There are literally thousands of persons employed by these current entities. No large change should be undertaken without due diligence as to the consequences to our citizens. The terms right to life and right to choose occupy much of our national dialogue. I will seek an approach that will greatly diminish the ongoing controversy. The rights, health, and freedom of choice of our citizens must be submitted in appropriate law and not subject to the varying state-by-state statutes. Personally, I feel that the federal government has no right to dictate my or its opinion on morals to our citizens. Therefore, I will offer an alternative to current law at the federal level. The alternative I propose is that an amendment to our Constitution be adopted that defines when life is viable. Once a human life is viable, the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, a part of the 14th Amendment, is in play. In this definition, the question of the legality of any abortion need not be adjudicated. Abortion prior to define when life is viable is between a woman's and her doctor's belief system and consciences. After such time, it becomes a matter for the justice system. Obviously, such an amendment would contain specific language concerning special cases such as health risks to the woman, rape, incest, etc. Until such time as an amendment is ratified, however, all current federal laws on abortion, right to choose, including, of course, Roe v. Wade, shall remain in effect. The 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection under the law. This will be followed stringently, and it will be applied independent of age, race, gender, religious preference, political leanings, or sexual orientations. Neither prosecutorial discretion nor executive order shall be used to thwart its intent. With regard to the 14th Amendment, I would encourage all states, cities, and local communities to refresh themselves to this content, especially the second clause of Section 1, which states, "Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." All too often we see stories of children being ripped from parents' love and custodial rights, deprived of their liberty and subjected to the whims of overzealous civil servants. And all because the child shaped a cookie in the form of a supposed gun, and because medical professionals cannot agree on a diagnosis. This must and shall cease. I would encourage all states, cities, and local communities, including school systems, where such actions against children and their parents have taken place and are taking place, to cease and desist. I will immediately ask the Justice Department to investigate and, where warranted, bring indictments against all found wanting in this matter as violations of the 14th Amendment. The issue of what defines a marriage has been an issue in our country for a long time. As part of the equal protection guarantee, neither the federal government nor the states have the right to define a certain segment of our people as being less equal under the law. Further, it is also not the right of the federal government to prescribe to the states how they must enact laws for anything outside the defined set in the Constitution. That is, Article 1, Section 8. Therefore, I will seek the amending of the U.S. Constitution to augment the 14th Amendment to prohibit any law discriminating against two adults' right to join together legally with all the legal rights and privileges of a man and woman who are married. The Commerce Clause of our Constitution, a part of Article 1, Section 8, states to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. That is the extent of the clause. The use of this clause has grown from its original perception as a modest little power to today's perception as the single most source of national power. The original intent of this clause, in part, was to prevent import duties among the states for goods transported across state lines. It was not meant to imply the federal control of what may or may not be transported across state lines, and, more to the point, the uses of those transported goods. The Commerce Clause shall no longer be approved by this administration to justify the expansion of the powers of the federal government. Having read the Constitution many times, I cannot find how imposing upon all of our citizens what type of light bulbs to use, what water pressure one's household may have, and the like, as appropriate for the federal government to dictate, especially using the Commerce Clause as justification. There are many such issues similar to this. I will work diligently to have overturned all such laws invasive to the American way of life. Therefore, I will ask for a review of any and all such overreaches stemming from the Commerce Clause. Where appropriate, I will ask Congress to nullify all such. James Madison, again the principal author of our Constitution, had a comment on this subject as well. The Commerce Clause was intended as a negative and preventive provision against injustice among the states themselves, rather than as a power to be used for the positive purposes of the general government. Issues relating to the federal government's benevolence toward and for its citizens is of great importance to all of us. Examples are Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Health Care for America Act, as well as others. Many feel that these types of programs should be unconstitutional, and there is merit to this opinion, not as to the merit of benevolence, but as to the merit of the federal government's right to prescribe and require such. Again, James Madison has something to say on the general subject. I cannot undertake to lay my finger on that article of the Constitution which granted a right to Congress of expending on objects of benevolence the money of their constituents. From history's perspective, the Social Security was deemed constitutional by the Supreme Court only after President Franklin Roosevelt threatened the court. The Affordable Health Care for America Act was only rendered constitutional after the Supreme Court replaced the word penalty for the word tax, even though the word tax was not in the bill under review. As to Social Security, it has been a forced contract from the American people since its enacting. There are many who feel that Social Security is a drain on the government coffers. In fact, the opposite should be true. The people and their employers are the ones who contribute. The government has contributed not a dime. The government has taken from Social Security to further its own extravagant spending. This will cease. Social Security will be made solvent for those who have lived by the forced contract. But it must be repaired. Its system is broken. One of my initial actions will be to call for a fiduciary review of Social Security with the output to be a set of recommendations as to how to move forward toward solvency. Such studies also will be requested for Medicare and Medicaid programs. As part of the review and repair of the Social Security system, I will seek to abolish any and all taxes applied against such payments, independent of any additional income retirees might have. This shall apply until the recipient has been paid all monies contributed by them or for them, and to include all interest garnered. After that point, normal taxation shall be in effect. The recipients in good faith have done their part of the contract. The government shall do its part. When the recent overhaul of the nation's health care was initiated, it was deemed that some 30 million people out of a population of over 300 million were uncovered by insurance. Anytime a 100% solution is applied to a 10% issue as complex as health care, it is indicative of managerial naivete, inexperience, ineptitude, and lack of insight as to what problems, i.e. ripple effects, may ensue, technologically, fiduciarily, and operationally. And any such approach is almost always destined to fail. Competent management, when faced with a complex issue, starts with something small, gets it to work, adds a new piece, get it to work, and work with the first piece, and builds up from there until an entire solution is at hand. Our country cannot afford the Affordable Health Care for America Act in its present form. Our businesses can't afford it. Our people can't afford it. and its implementation is far too complex and faulty. No one wants to see anyone go without proper and adequate health care. Such would be unacceptable. The country needs an alternative. Such an alternative should be geared toward bettering the availability and quality of health care while spurring employment. An alternative that is cost-effective without untold levels of bureaucracy and is easily implemented. I will immediately ask that a small team be formed consisting of physicians, financial experts, and data processing experts to offer recommendations to Congress. I will also seek opinions from Congress and others on how things might be streamlined to make the current law workable until a viable alternative may be implemented. I will ask that recommendations for streamlining the current law be available for review within 60 days from today. Further, all existing waivers to the Affordable Health Care Act will be nullified. We all live by the laws of our great land. No one is above the law. An aspect of social discord seems to be creeping into our culture at an increasing rate. This is not by accident. There are certain political factions in our country that believe their aims may be best attained through dividing us, one against the other. This is sometimes referred to as divide and conquer, or as some translations from the Greek call it, divide and rule. This strategy has been used effectively throughout history, from Julius Caesar to Gabinius during the latter part of the Roman Empire, to Machiavelli, and to certain political forces at work today in our country. James Madison even warned Thomas Jefferson of this, calling divide and rule a reprobated axiom of tyranny. This strategy is not new to American politics. In this country, a very small group of academics documented an implementation of this strategy in the 1960s. This strategy was geared toward transforming our nation, our culture, and our way of life. It wished to fundamentally transform our country from a nation where the government works for the people to one where the people work for the government. It has been fermenting and growing stronger ever since. The basis of this strategy can be summed up by a quote from Vladimir Lenin. A lie told often enough becomes the truth. Be not taken in by this strategy. It is designed to divide us, nothing more. And that divide is meant to control every aspect of our lives. Here are but 3 examples of this strategy at work: political correctness, manufactured crises, and perceived racism. We see political correctness being used by the media, ourselves, and it is even seen affecting how companies operate. The use of terms such as Irish American, African American, Italian American, and the like tend to cement an image in our minds of separateness. Despite the differences in our origins, we are not separate. We are Americans. The differences in our heritage and ancestral ethnicities and nationalities are important. Without the melting of these differences into our culture, we would not be the great nation we are. Leave it to the academics to define what makes us different. We should focus on what makes us one, on what makes us Americans. Political correctness has crept into our culture at an ever-increasing rate over the past several decades. Civility is one thing, but attempting to curtail something that someone says, however innocent in its intent, is a tool heavily used by those who would divide us. Such is a means for control of our citizens, nothing more. There is an adage that states, tolerance begets tolerance, and intolerance begets intolerance. President John Kennedy had a thought on this subject. Intolerance implies no lack of commitment to one's own beliefs. Rather, it condemns the oppression or persecution of others. We should strive to keep this in mind. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, nor has Congress done so. Our culture should abide by the spirit of the First Amendment. If one does not like what a radio host says, change the station. If one does not like what a TV show offers, change the channel. If one does not like what another person says, do not associate with that person. And this goes well beyond speech. Restricting the proper display of the American flag or reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance because it might offend someone of a national origin other than our own is, well, anti-American. Let all of us cease this, and let all of us become more tolerant of others' beliefs and opinions. Further, were I to commit a crime, I would not expect the authorities to stop and investigate Asian women, as an example, in their search for me. Were it that the Irish Republican Army had committed an act of terrorism against our country, I personally would expect to be heavily scrutinized whenever I flew on a commercial flight. I do not think it's reasonable in looking for someone fitting my profile to waste time, money, and energy patting down a 90-year-old black woman in a wheelchair, nor commit what amounts to legalized child abuse in the screening of children. Please, let us use common sense and not become what some would desire, politically controlled. To continue on a similar theme, the issue of voter IDs has occupied much political discussion lately. The argument against requiring photo IDs when voting stresses that such a requirement lays undue burden on certain of our minority populations, including the poorest among us. This is a fallacious argument at its best. Free photo IDs are available to all. However, as the argument against requiring IDs continues, travel to such places to obtain the IDs is burdensome, so they say. If such travel is so burdensome, how are those same burdened people supposed to get to the polls to vote? As a suggestion, if you know of someone who has difficulty in getting to the place that offers free IDs, volunteer to take them. You will feel good about having done so, and they will be most grateful for your act of kindness. Consider, what is of the most importance? Being able to fly commercially and obtain health care, both of which require IDs, or casting a vote for those who, in a very large part, will decide the future of our great land. The insistence on voter IDs is critical to the avoidance of voter fraud. It's as simple as that. An administration official once quipped, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste." What he was remiss in verbally adding was, especially if the government manufactured it. The global warming issue is an example of a manufactured crisis. The theory that man is the cause is just that, a theory. It is being used to generate fear and thereby establish control. Although a work of fiction, Michael Crichton's 2004 book, State of Fear, illustrates the point all too well. Theories abound surrounding global warming, or, as was politically motivated, is now called climate change. People have been removed from their employment for having a theory different than others. People have lost their research funding for the same reason. Remember, until proven as fact, a theory is just a guess. Let us not ostracize others because their guess is different than our own. In fact, recently it has been uncovered that the temperature data for the United States has been fabricated to indicate a warming of our nation. The actuality is the United States has been cooling since the 1930s. Another manufactured crisis is the unlawful allowance of an untold number of illegal immigrants into our country at an ever-increasing rate. This action merely strives to separate us from unity. Illegal immigration is and has been at the forefront of our political discourse for a long time. The issues it encompasses are neither trivial nor to be swept under the rug, but they must be solved. They must be confronted and dealt with in a comprehensive and compassionate manner. This great nation has been formed through the efforts and struggles of our illegal immigrants. They are not the issue to be addressed here. The legal immigrants in our country are always welcome and encouraged. They made us who we are. However, there are literally millions of persons here illegally. They are bleeding away precious resources from our citizens, causing confusion in our legal system, and downgrading our ability to grow as a nation. And it is not just people looking for work who come here illegally. It is drug smugglers, violent gang members, and even Al-Qaeda terrorists who are threatening our security. Both the issues of illegal immigration and border security shall be addressed in a manner of most haste. During my campaign, I outlined solutional concepts for our growing illegal immigration issues as well as our border security problem. Employers of all sizes across our country have expressed that the use of these persons is critical to their business viability. Therefore, my concept places upon the employers of such persons the responsibility to ensure that all employees here illegally registered as temporary workers, enroll in Social Security, file and pay income and local taxes. Fines and even imprisonment await employees who do not comply. Illegal persons in our country do not sign up for the care and feeding of those who do not follow our laws. And through my concept, those here illegally now and in the future registered as temporary workers will have the opportunity and will be encouraged to apply for citizenship. They will be treated no differently than any other person seeking citizenship. They may join the millions before them in the continuance of keeping our country great. My plan for border security does not involve a wall. It is too costly and too inefficient. A wall did not work for the communists with the Berlin Wall, nor did it work for the Chinese with the Great Wall of China. It is unlikely to work for us. My plan does call for a geosynchronous satellite, drones, and the wonderful men and women of our Border Patrol. The cost projections for building a wall of only 700 miles over our 2,000 miles of border represent a staggering $60 billion, not to build and operate security features, just to build it. My proposal would build and operate the system I propose for over 1/2 century for less than the cost of just building the currently proposed wall. As to perceived racism, we must look inward to ensure that civility is the forefront of our treatment of others. Should one disagree with a person of color on some issue, it does not make that person a racist. It means they disagree. And if a person votes for or votes against someone because of their race, that person is very unlikely to make the Common Sense Hall of Fame. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated, "I look to a day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." Let us strive to see his dream become a reality. This perceived racism is but another means to divide us. Let us not fall prey to this most base of strategies. Issues seem to increasingly arise relative to government employees at all levels being incompetent or guilty of malfeasance in office. Coupled to this is the belief that government employees are prohibited from removal from their jobs. This last assertion, of course, is not true, but it takes entirely too much effort to remove such an individual from government employment. All rules that support the above shall be changed. Effective soon as rule changes can be made, any person whose incompetence cannot be corrected, and any person guilty of fraud or illegal activity against the people of the United States shall be immediately removed from government employment and legally prosecuted if appropriate. I'm very much aware that the government works for you, the American people, and not the other way around. You have the absolute right to demand competence, integrity, and fiduciary responsibility from your employees. Many have opinioned that certain laws passed by Congress and signed into law seem to be applicable to some and not to others. Starting today, any law brought forth under our administration shall be applicable to members of the federal government as well as to all citizens of our great nation. The bills generated and approved by Congress over many years have increased in the size and complexity of their documentation and content, and increased to the point where our representatives do not read such bills and have little or no comprehension of what these bills contain until after they have become law. This will cease effective immediately. Under this administration, no bill brought for my signature will be considered or signed by me that exceeds 100 pages in length. Each will be constructed in the language of the people, that is, not filled with legalese, and no bill shall have buried within it earmarks. As an aside, a recent bill signed into law had 1,000+ pages of text, along with over 20,000 pages of rules and regulations. Patently absurd. Further, prior to my enacting a bill into law, the following shall occur. With each bill submitted, Congress shall provide the constitutional justification of the bill's content and intent, separate from the bill itself. Each representative having voted on a bill, either yea or nay, shall provide a signed statement that they personally have read the bill. To repeat an earlier statement, no bill will be signed into law by me that is not equally applicable to the people of our nation and the members of Congress and members of my administration. No one is above the law. The provisions of each bill shall have an independent review as to the constitutionality of the bill. Any negative result of the above will obviate my signing such a bill brought forth. Further, each bill submitted for signing will have an accompanying document detailing specifically how the intended bill fits within the current and any future planned federal budget. Included shall be the identification of all required rules and regulations for the bill, whether each and every regulation is constitutional, and what impact such regulations have upon the current and future federal budgets. Any submitted bill and its regulations that exceed the federal budget will not be signed by me. Upon these actions and my willingness to sign such a bill, the bill will be posted on the internet for all citizens to view for a full 2 weeks prior to my actually signing it. Our national debt and current levels of government spending are not sustainable. Drastic action is needed. We need positive actions. Basically, we cannot afford to continue to operate the way we have been for the last many decades. In William Shakespeare's play Hamlet, Polonius offers to Laertes, neither borrower nor lender be. We should strive to live by this. However, the results of the last 100 years make this a difficult goal. We will strive to get there. One of the things that makes it difficult is our national bank, the Federal Reserve, or the Fed. Many believe that the Fed is part of the United States federal government. Many would be incorrect. The Fed is wholly owned and operated by banks external to our government. Every cent you earn, every cent you have comes as a result of the federal government borrowing from the Fed and then pays the Fed interest on that same money. A goodly portion of our national debt is owed to the Fed. Perhaps Thomas Jefferson put it best. A private central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army. Jefferson went further. The central bank is an institution of the most deadly hostility existing against the principles and form of our Constitution. And there has never been a full and proper financial audit of the Fed, even though one is called for in their charter. We need to bring the control of our own money back to the people of the United States of America. I will seek, through the efforts of our team of financial experts and the support of Congress, to bring the fiduciary operations of the Fed under the direct control of your government and therefore you. In so doing, a goodly portion of our debt may be obviated, the dollar made more valuable, and the road to financial recovery made less difficult. Beyond the Fed, however, things must change. We need to increase our revenue and decrease our spending now. Coupled with a revenue increase and spending decrease, future budgets will not be approved unless they are balanced. As I have mentioned, if too large a change is made too quickly, unforeseen impacts may arise. The balanced budget mandate may take a year or so to fully implement, but each budget will be approved if and only if it is designed to reduce our debt and designed so that we live within our means, with the goal of a totally balanced budget within 2 years. One method of increasing revenue is to increase the employment of our people. More jobs equal more taxes equals more revenue. It's pretty much that simple, but not as easy to implement without things changing. Therefore, I will ask Congress to greatly simplify the tax codes, that no individual will pay more than 25% federal income tax, that businesses have a maximum tax liability of 15%, and that everyone in our country pays something in income tax, however small. Currently, over 50% of our people pay no income tax at all. The more people who work, the more revenue comes to the government for its operations and to pay off our debt. Tax incentives currently exist beneficial to employers who utilize workers in foreign lands. This is to be reversed. Our people come first, always. Oil and natural gas production will be encouraged. I will seek any and all avenues of greatly increasing our at-home employment opportunities. At the same time, I will seek to institute tax incentives to the development of renewable energy on a national level. Not loans and not handouts, but tax incentives. This will expand private business interests, which will increase employment. Our goal, to make this nation an energy exporter, not an energy importer. Further, all Americans should have the right to work. The right to work shall include the right to engage in collective bargaining and the right not to engage in collective bargaining. The federal government should not, does not, and will not enjoy the right to deny the states their right to allow or disallow collective bargaining. At the federal level, no person shall be denied the right to employment whether they belong to a union or not. Any person or organization engaging in activities attempting to thwart this intent will be dealt with swiftly and harshly. This includes requiring people to contribute dues to collective bargaining entities where they themselves do not belong. Our great nation was founded in liberty for all, and that includes the liberty to work in a manner our people desire. The current culture of entitlement will be the death knell of our nation. First, however, let us define some terms. The entitlement issues of which I speak do not include those relating to Social Security. The persons receiving Social Security truly are entitled to what they receive. Today's culture of entitlement refers to those who require the federal government to provide them something they have not earned. Never before in history have the words of President John Kennedy had more applicability. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Welfare of any kind should be for the truly needy among us and not a general operating philosophy. The view of being entitled to that which one did not earn and the government offering it leads one very quickly to a socialistic style of government. Never in the history of the world has any government founded upon socialism prospered or survived. Our great nation needs to swing back to the ideals of individual responsibility, positive work ethic, and the freedom to conduct legal business without overreaching government interference or control. The availability of ever-increasing employment is the answer. Our very survival is at stake. For many years, our country has been flirting with Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics, simply put, advocates more spending leads to prosperity. To this end, some have and do advocate that we become more like Europe. Some view that this, as opposed to capitalism, may work. However, Keynesian economics has never been shown to work in the long run. As the old saying goes, pretty soon you run out of other people's money. As we financially exist in an ever-growing global economy, we should not aspire to become more like Europe. We should support Europe becoming more like us. The world would be a better place. As I inferred, the federal government is spending far more than is sustainable fiduciarily. Cutting spending is critical. Where and how to cut is not a simple thing to answer. The current culture of spend at all cost and borrow what one must has evolved over many, many years and has been supported by many administrations. To address a course correction too quickly could and would have unforeseen negative results. So, I will ask Congress, independent thinkers, to consider and Congress to act upon the following. Review each and every agency, department of the current federal government and all presidential executive orders issued and still in effect. This set of reviews will focus on Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution, the enumerated powers of the federal government. Each agency, department, and executive order will be assessed as to whether the federal government has the authority to operate as defined, including the activities, rules, and regulations issued by these entities or directives. Where such agencies, departments, activities, rules, or regulations are found wanting, a plan will be requested for their reduction or obviation. This will not be a fast-track item. Again, changing something too quickly or too greatly may have unforeseen consequences. Any plans put forth must be accompanied by a risk analysis of what to do next and a how will completion be assessed approaches. We should not forget that the federal government is the largest employer in the United States. This should not be the case. We need to have a government that governs, not controls through its sheer size and power. This country's independence was fought and won to overcome such adversity. Overspending shall be brought under control. Article 10 of our Constitution states, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people." An example of how this article has been misused by the federal government, consider the stimulus bill of 2009. Within it is buried a provision for federal funds to be made available to the states for education. But the states can obtain such funds if and only if they adopt certain identified standards as their teaching standard. One size does not fit all. Such wording is tantamount to extortion by the federal government against the states. This type of forcing upon the states the will of the federal government is at an end. It is direct opposition to Article 10 of our Constitution. There are many instances of this form of obviating the intent and meaning of Article 10. Unnecessary spending and government overreach of control shall be brought under control and eliminated. Over the last few decades, our foreign policy has had negative returns. We have inserted ourselves where many would argue we should not have. We basically have abandoned our friends, and we are thought of less favorably than in the past. And terrorism has been on the increase worldwide. We have tended to react rather than be proactive. This we will change. It is our solemn hope that we may be friends with all nations. The reality, of course, may not make this goal achievable, but this administration will work diligently to that aim. But appeasement will not be in our tool bag at any time. In this administration, we will not interfere in the internal affairs of other nations where our safety and overall good of our nation is not at risk. We will not provide foreign aid to countries who are not our friends or to whom we owe large debts. We will seek equal trade agreements between us and our trade partners. Unfair or unequal trade arrangements will not be in our operational methods. Doing otherwise makes no logical sense. With that being said, should natural disasters strike, we will be there to help, friend or foe. Humanity goes beyond political or cultural differences. Gang violence in our inner cities and now expanding to the heartland of our nation, often involving numerous acts of criminal behavior, is not part of the American way. I will immediately ask Congress to designate those who participate in, offer willing support to, or otherwise further the interests of such groups be classified as domestic terrorists. The full extent of federal law and power shall be used to eradicate gang violence from our nation. Our citizens shall not be subjected to the terror actions of these groups. With this measure in place, we will form a special FBI task force to operate in conjunction with state and local governments to rid this nation of gang violence. Those who use violence against law enforcement officers in this endeavor will find their actions met with terminating response. In addition, I will ask Congress to enact the following. Any U.S. citizen proven to actively engage with or offer support to nations, groups, or individuals pursuing harm to our people or our nation to be classified as domestic terrorist. And such classification shall be applied retroactively to any and all offenses deemed terrorist in nature. Further, I will ask Congress to specify that all persons declared domestic terrorists be stripped of their citizenship and, if applicable, deported to their country of origin. Much has been made of presidential executive orders. Prior administrations have issued them in the hundreds with varying degrees of impact upon our country. From time to time it may be necessary to issue such, but it will be for expedient emergency situations only. Any such order by this administration will have a duration of 60 days. These 60 days will allow Congress to consider their longer-term correctness and offer bills into law submitting such executive orders, or not. If Congress takes no action, such executive orders will expire after the 60-day period. No person or business should make substantial, long-term changes to their method of carrying out their daily affairs based on any executive order I issue. Again, this will be for emergency expedient use only. Longer-lasting items will be the job of Congress to adjudicate. Where we find it necessary to engage in battle as authorized by Congress to protect our great nation and our people, our brave men and women in the military will be afforded every advantage, logistically, tactically, and strategically. Rules of engagement will be enhanced to afford our military personnel the safest, surest way to ensure a speedy victory. We will fight to win and only to win. If attacks are made against us here or abroad, we will strike back swiftly and with extreme prejudice. Be it a government who sponsors terror groups and their actions, a group or groups that threaten our way of life, or individuals, we will be decisive. And for those who feel this statement is nothing more than political rhetoric, I'll quote Humphrey Bogart's line from the movie The Caine Mutiny. I kid you not. I say to them, do not be confused with prior administrations' reluctance to use the mightiest military force the world has ever known. Such reluctance does not reside here. As to the brave men and women of our military, both active and retired, stories of late abound with deserved benefits being denied or delayed for up to a year or longer. That is over. No amount of legal red tape will restrict the timeliness of benefits to those who have served and do serve to protect our way of life. To all active military personnel and to all veterans, as long as I am in office, the President of the United States of America has your six. My fellow citizens, we have begun our new journey. I want to reinforce success relies heavily upon you. Some, if not many, of the things I have outlined here may not be fully realizable within my administration's tenure. Bureaucracies by their very nature are like large ships at sea, hard to get moving and harder still to change course quickly. Should our new journey prove beneficial to our great nation, future administrations, hopefully with your insistence, will put aside their personal and political motivations and keep our new journey alive. Our new journey, I'm convinced, will put us on the correct path, the path envisioned by our founding fathers, and the path best suited for our advancement. I thank you for your attention today, and may God bless the United States of America and us all. Hey, thanks a lot for watching that video. Below the video, you'll see, you can see it right down there. You'll see a link to the text version of this speech. Within the text are embedded links to provide you more information on some of the measures that I proposed. You can tell where to click because the text color will be different than the normal text. And these specifically are on immigration and defense of our borders. Again, thanks for watching.